Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Yanette Cortez. I'm the graduate program recruiter for the School of Film and Television. I wanted to welcome you all to our very first session for our Meet the Professor series. We have Professor Charles Swanson here, Professor of Cinematography. He is also the Associate Dean for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for SFTV here at LMU. And this is going to just be a really, casual Q&A. I'll start off and I'll ask Charles here a few questions, and then we encourage you all to, jump in and ask your questions as well, pick his brain. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Or Charles, was there anything? I know it was a really short bio, but but if you wanted to introduce yourself.
I think if you haven't read my bio, I'm very shy about of my accomplishments. I did a lot of freelance work and independent work prior to teaching here. So my work is not lauded in a profession the upper level of professional accomplishment, but I was accomplished in those areas. I enjoyed it. I think that I worked with some very talented people. And if you look up a film called Small, Beautifully Moving Parts, that's probably one of my most enjoyable experiences. I'm also going to put a challenge to the group in the chat to name the film behind me. Don't just put it in the chat if you get the reference. I'm big on reference. Bradley, you're the first person to get it. That's quite correct. I'm a big fan of, when I was at USC doing my study, I was a big fan of early first wave Asian cinema. And I think that the works that are coming out of Korea right now is kicking some good butt. So yeah, let's go ahead.
All right, thanks, Charles. So the first question we have, can you tell us how you became a cinematographer, your start in the industry, and also your work now as a professor?
So yeah, I'm a graduate of Morehouse College in Atlanta. I was studying really to be an English. I was an English lit major. I was going to write, and a former professor of mine who's like a surrogate mom to me. She basically said, she pulled me to the side and said, "Sweetheart, your writing is like a script. It's not like a novel, and you're truncating a lot of your description." And so I took a class in screenwriting, and at the end of the class in screenwriting, they had us produce a short film. Well, as soon as I picked up the camera, I fell in love with it. I was trained by a guy named Tommy Burns, who has since passed on, but he was a huge influence to the Atlanta film scene back in the 90s. He shot or worked on some of the big films coming out of Atlanta. In fact, Daughters of the Dust, if you're aware of that film, he gaffed that film. And his DP was also a friend of mine who I worked with, AJ, Arthur Jaffa. Arthur Jaffa is another name. If you don't know, you should look up. He lensed Crooklyn for Spike Lee. He also did Daughters of Duff with his wife, Julie Dash. They influenced me in terms of thinking about that I could actually be a cinematographer. I remember hearing the word, but never really considering it. Coming from a working class background in Michigan. And I remember I left college and went to teach English in Japan for 3 years. And while I was there, I just picked up every camera I could and I just shot whatever I could shoot. That footage and my still images got me into USC's film school. And that was my first entry level experience. And I have to tell you, I was older. A lot of my friends, I was 29 by the time I got accepted, but I felt like it was a great time to be there in the mid 90s. A lot of the friends I made there are all the friends that I've worked with professionally. In fact, this job here was led to me by one of my colleagues and one of my classmates when I was there, Kennedy Wheatley, who teaches here. So I would say to all of you guys, follow your passions. Cinematography was the thing that I knew. Once I could tell a story visually, I was hooked. I couldn't write. I've tried writing since. It just doesn't work. So. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. What's your favorite part about working at LMU, and what would you consider some of your greatest achievements while you've been here?
Favorite part is really the teaching. My mom's a teacher. I never thought I'd love it as much. I love having students discuss with me their projects, and then really giving that straightforward, you really want to have someone jump off that building at this period in your script. I read scripts for students, but visually, one of the things that I find the greatest joy in is taking a script, reading it with a student, and doing what I call popcorn thoughts, just popping off, where are we going to place the camera? Why is it important that you're on this lens? What color are you going to affect this image with? The big question I ask everyone, if you ever take my cinematography class, you're going to hear it in there, is before you start to light or lens something, you should understand what is the subtext of that scene. Asking the question, what is the one word subtext to the scene? That can cut through all of the mystery you're trying to figure out when you're trying to create the visuals for that imagery, because it will change depending upon what the motivation of the characters, what's happening. But being true to that is one of the best advice I can give to you. I love being in the classroom. I teach on the stage, so I'm not really in a classroom. My classroom is the stage. We learn in that class. I do a lecture. It's a 5-hour class. A lot of people are just 4 or 5-hour class. A lot of people are like, what? And I'm like, it goes by before you know it. Because we lecture for about 2 to 3 hours, and then we do lab for about 2 to 3 hours, depending. And then we start shooting. My greatest joy is when I get to see you guys learn some of these more technical aspects. What's exposure, meaning what is an f-stop, and not in its technical terms, but how are you going to utilize that light control to manipulate your image in the way that you want to? What's depth of field? Why did you choose a wide-angle lens versus a telephoto? The things that get down to the language of visual storytelling that you've come to film school for. So I'm kind of myopic when it comes to visual storytelling, because as I said to a sound colleague, and it sounds very what do you say, exclusionary. We don't call it motion sound, we call it motion pictures. And so if you can craft a story without needing dialogue, and your audience enjoys it and loves it, think Wall-E, then you're doing most of the work. And I think that that's what people come to. We want to see visual representation, and we want to experience that. So yeah.
Thanks, Charles. You kind of answered the next question, which is like, what classes do you teach? And what are some of your favorite student projects that you've seen?
So the classes I primarily teach now, I teach less now that I'm Associate Dean of Equity, but when I return back to teaching, I will primarily teach Introduction to Cinematography, Intermediate Cinematography, and then an advanced. But I really enjoy having some of our younger cinematographers who are out there working come in and guide our advanced students into connection with the industry. I can get you into the foundations, understanding the core, understanding of visual storytelling through the lens. But I think one of the key things we're starting to do better job here is getting you off the bluff, getting you integrated into your future life as a freelancer. What does it mean to get into the union? Why do you need to consider being a better entrepreneur with your career? And so those are things we start advancing. We start moving into an advance, and we're going to build that more. What I look forward to teaching in the near future, I want to develop an aesthetics class where we study paintings and other visual language tropes to help us approach how we're going to tell this story visually.
That's great. Thank you, Charles. Next question is, how would you suggest an MFA from LMU would help students in their career?
Well, it depends upon where you are. I'm going to be real frank and say that I really encourage students to consider MFA after they've been out of school for a minute. I say that because jumping from undergrad to grad school, we really want to have you have this storytelling, these stories to tell. And when you jump, you're oftentimes avoiding some of the stress that you will have that will tell those stories, force you to tell these deeper stories once you've been out of undergrad and you've lived life. So I would say an MFA is going to be a positive in your life for two reasons. You're going to build a relationship with many people here at this school. You're going to not only our graduate, but our undergraduate students. We encourage you to work with our undergraduates. And a lot of people are like, well, why do you encourage that? We're graduate students, they're undergrads. Well, the reality is our undergrad students have often been producing work since their high school days. And so when they come into their existence in producing work in their undergrad experience, a lot of them are advanced and they're very talented. And by the time you guys get here and you're into your first year, that melds really, really well in that you'll be working with them on sets, they'll be working with you, you'll be helping them with some of the storyline, and they'll be helping you with more of some of the technical aspects. Also, MFA is going to allow you to teach in the future. A lot of you may think that's not something I want to do. I didn't think I wanted to do it as well, but it is an option for you. The industry is a very interesting experience for a lot of people, and that freelance life can be ups and downs. And I always say you need to build your support system and a system for you to be able to dip out sometimes and dip back in. I know several people that have taught and they've gone on to dip back into the industry and make successful. So that MFA is one of the foundations that you are going to need to get a job, full-time teaching gig in the U.S. And then it doesn't hurt when you're traveling. I've taught in Germany, I've taught in Asia, and I think we're going to try to do a little teaching in South Africa in the future. So it's one of the things that doesn't hurt.
Yeah, we have a question in the chat.
Yeah.
So Jesus asks, he says, been out of school for a few years. Will I be at a disadvantage in catching up from a tech standpoint?
No, it's just everyone's coming in at a different level. I think what I would do is, if you're thinking about applying for next year, is there's an immense amount of data out there on YouTube. Literally, my students say, well, where does our curriculum come from? And I said, it used to be me doing research in the library, going to different DPs I knew. Now I'm going to different DPs, but I'm also doing dead searches on YouTube. I'm learning stuff from YouTube that helps me affect my ability to teach you guys, because people are getting the information out there. So I want you to be proactive, and I want you to consider the entry-level areas of just learning the outlay of a camera. One of the best things you can do is to understand the fundamentals of a camera. A Sony, a Canon. Those are the two systems I really encourage students to learn on first. They're intuitive, you can get into them quickly, and then once you've learned that, you don't have that same reaction to, oh, the tech side. I would also say go out and volunteer as a PA on a couple of short films around your area, wherever you are. There are several film societies that you can look up in your area, and someone's shooting almost every weekend. Go out and help, because that'll help your nomenclature, it'll help your language, it'll give you a confidence when you're considering writing your own personal statement to a film school, because you have been on set, you know what that breath of life is. It helped me a great deal when I wrote my application at USC, having worked on several short films in Japan that several of my friends, we wanted to make films. So we got together and we produced one of our works each weekend, and we got together and then we used that as our preparation for film school. So no, don't worry too much about the technical side. We will start at an entry level and take you up quickly into an intermediate level.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I may add to that as well, we have applicants and admitted students from all types of backgrounds. Not every student that applies has a film background or is, familiar with the industry. We have students that were previously in nursing programs or studied biochemistry or just, I don't know, engineering, things like that. But yeah, those kinds of different backgrounds are what make you all very unique, and it definitely makes like for better class spaces as well, because we get different voices and perspectives from all your backgrounds. And my last question for you, Charles, is if you had any, other additional advice for our prospective students here.
Yes, I did. I kind of went into it briefly, and when I'm thinking about, I was put myself into you guys' position. I think you're entering at a really good time, because it was difficult the last couple of years to consider going into a film program for those reasons of, am I going to be able to shoot, right? I want to stress to you that if you decide to go to film school, go deeply into doing your research on how you can get funding to help. It's out there, but you got to start now. You got to start looking at what funding resources you might have. And also, there's a competitive edge when you get to film school that I would ask that all of you consider regulating. And what I mean is, be the best storyteller you can be. Take your breath and your voice and expound upon that. Don't worry what someone else is doing next to you, because what we often have is what we call production creep. And a student will come in and say, I'm going to make this movie for $3,000. And then they'll hear somebody say, oh, well, I've got $20,000 to make my film. And they'll think that that's a deficit. It's not. Money does not make a better project. It is your storytelling ability. Please do not ignore that. Please listen to me when I say that. It is your storytelling ability. And through visual storytelling, you can craft a very interesting film with 2 actors. That was what a friend of mine, that's my film that got me into USC. A friend of mine was at USC already, and I said, what do I need to do? She said, Charles, do a film, 2 actors, 1 location. And when I started thinking about it, I was like, all these limitations. But there's a very famous quote that says, limitation begats art, right? And it's true. If you have talent, the talent will shine through your limitations, and the limitations will hone you as a better storyteller. So consider that and start writing now. Like, don't wait. Okay, I'm gonna do all this when I get to film school. Write. Either write or get with others that write. I'm not a writer, but when I was at film school, I was asked to write. I was forced to write because I'm producing my own work the first 2 years. You'll be doing the same thing in most graduate film programs, including ours. So start jotting down little small snippets of ideas now. Like when you're out watching, people watching, jot down, oh, I saw this girl do this. It was very interesting why she was doing it. Just jot that down. Jot down the small relationship in your family that can be the seminal spark to a larger story. And remember, you want small sparks at the beginning. We're not telling feature-length projects when you're in film school. You're talking about telling short, compact, short films. Because a lot of students are like, well, why aren't we telling features? If you can tell a compact, concise, interesting story in 5 minutes, the expansion is the easy part. Contraction is the most difficult. So please remember, because when you contract, you're throwing away story elements. Expansion is what you want to consider. Also, I would highly advise all of you to consider taking an entrepreneurial course somewhere online if you have to understand what a freelance life will be. Because when you graduate from here, you're going to be a freelancer. You're going to have to handle your own taxes, your own personal planning, and how do you self-market yourself, right? And then get on TikTok, get on IG, get used to that. I know I'm an old dude. I told my nephew, don't send me another app you want me to sign up for. I'm not doing it. But I will say that there's a couple of social media sites that you just have to be a part of, because you're going to see what other people are doing. I say IG because DPs tend to be on IG left and right. TikTok are the up and coming DPs putting their reels and such on that. Vimeo is still available, but you want to start thinking about how you cultivate your presence so that when your name comes up, people go, oh, hold on. And you know what you guys are going to do. You're just going to immediately go on your phones and look them up. Should pop up, boom. And this is, I'm talking your second, third year here at the school, so that you can transition in your third year to being a semi-professional person out there in the industry. Okay, Michael, you asked, what is diversity, equity, and inclusion? The business Hollywood is constantly excluding minorities. Does LMU support a more realistic view or our population? What is your role? My role as Associate Dean of Equity is to further the causes of what we call DEI. I stop at equity because I'm very straightforward with people. You do not expand diversity or inclusion until there's equity, meaning equity comes in all different shapes and sizes. If I walk into a room and I'm the only man in the room, then we have to have a conversation. If I walk into a room and I'm the only Black person in the room, we have to have a conversation, because the stories I'm going to tell and the stories I'm going to want to promote are going to be different. And we have to get past those difficult cultural connections and disconnections so that what I bring to the table is as important as what you may bring to the table. And those difficult conversations are the ones that we're trying to foster through the Equity Council. We're going to be doing some training next semester in diversity awareness. Diversity, but also disabilities awareness, and how filmmakers can be more accommodating within their hiring of people with disabilities, and also diversity. And it's easy to say the word diversity, but how are you going to implement that? And so we're bringing techniques, ideas into the classroom so that faculty can be at the forefront of addressing what's in the industry. I agree with you. I recognize that, faces are not represented in the numbers they should be in the media. There's been a lot that's been popping off recently. I think the English are doing a much better job at being colorblind in their casting, but casting's not all of it. It is going to be your role to help your fellow American, fellow coworker, what international person, globally minded person, in getting those jobs and holding those jobs. And that is the most awkward and difficult thing that we're going to have to do. And that is compromising our own ideal of the perfect or the right. And I want everybody to consider that, because that's what it comes down to. We all have our idea of what is right or correct. And diversity and inclusion often forces us to ask the question, are there multiple rights? And I think there are. And I think there are multiple ways to get to that destination we're looking for.
We have another question.
Yes.
Yeah, and I will also open this to Dakota Fitzsimmons, who is my graduate assistant. He's also a third year in the film and television production program. So Charles, if that's okay with you, I'll ask you first. So in what ways does LMU stand out from the other MFA film schools?
LMU, you produce and you own your work, right? And I went to USC, that wasn't the case, right? LMU, we're still small comparatively. I like the fact that when I walk in that building, either one of our three buildings, you get a sense of you're going to walk 2 feet and someone you know is going to walk past you. A professor you know is going to walk past you. You're going to strike up a conversation and you're going to know. And it's not difficult to say to someone, hey, who is that? I heard about them. And then connection. It's not a mystery school. We don't do the 300 people in a lecture hall. Your classrooms will be at most somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 to 14 students. In cinematography, we've had to go as high as 16. We try not to do that often, but the numbers sometimes force us to. But still, 16 is a doable number. But we try to get down to that personal ability of, you can email me, Even in my role now, you email me, I may not get right back to you, but within about 24 hours, you're gonna get that response from Swanson. And I'm gonna say, hey, let's just have a meeting. The Zoom is good, but I love to just meet with students out in front of the building and have a chat. And then we can figure out what's necessary going from there. You get really a lot of straightforward talk from your fellow graduates who will be here. And I also still say, don't pass on the building those relationships with undergrads, because they will be out there, they will be working, and you want your name on their lips as well. When they're PAing for someone and says, oh, well, you need a DP? Hey, look at this guy. You know, he was at my school and he was shooting a bunch of stuff. Look at Heather. She was producing a lot of things, right? That's what you want. The more, the better. Was that good? Okay.
Yeah, I think in the same vein, LMU has especially SFTV at LMU has an exceptionally strong community, and it fosters collaboration in a way that I've never experienced. My undergrad is also in film, and it's never been like this. Like you walking around, like even today, before this, I was at the Westchester campus, and you just bump into people you know. Hey, how's your shoot going? Hey, what's this? Hey, do you need help with? And that is every day. And it is the most collaborative community I've ever been a part of, and has made me such a strong filmmaker because of it. That is truly what sets LMU apart.
And may I give one little more bit of advice? So the stuff is going to pop out every now and then. When I first started teaching here, I had a student who sat in my office. He said, is there any way, he was so frustrated, he said, is there any way for me to make films without other people? And I was like, yeah, that's totally doable, man. I mean, I'm being honest, it's totally doable. It will take you 8 times the amount of time to get your short done as it will be working with other individuals. You will do every job, you'll be exhausted, and every job will be compromised. If you consider coming to film school, I really want you guys to consider that making these relationships are important, because we're gonna put on your back, if you're a production student, that you in your first 2 years you have to be the producer, because no one else is going to come out of the woodwork. You have to be the director. You have to be the sound person. You have to be a cinematographer. In my class, you have to be a cinematographer, and then we're gonna say producer, all the key positions. After that halfway through your second year, I need you all to consider that you can give 100% of your time to something. That's when you find that talented other person who wants to be the producer to work with you. That's when you go and you spent the last year looking for that DP who can help visually translate your piece. Try not to be the writer, producer, director while you're here. Try to work with as many people as you possibly can, because you will be able to put 100% of your attention on one of those roles. And that's very important, right? You're always going to be executive producer, so maybe not 100%, but more higher up at 70, 80%, you'll be so much further than your classmates who have to split it into 30, 30, 30.
Thanks, Charles. And thank you as well, Dakota, for putting in your 2 cents. Much appreciated as a current grad student. So I'd like to open the floor to questions from everybody. Ask away. And you may unmute yourself or raise your hand.
I'm about to go on television if I answered all your questions. That's fantastic. Michael, I think I just saw you raise your hand.
Go ahead, Michael. Oh, I think you're muted.
I'm mute. Here I am. Okay, yeah. So, I think it's exciting being a professor, teacher. I'm kind of looking into that because I've been writing screenplays and I thought, this is great. Like, I want to train myself to be some kind of teacher. But what happens is you're recruited into the industry where maybe, like, since Charles is a cinematographer, how do you balance being a teacher professor and yet working in the industry? Doesn't it conflict? How do you do your projects in Hollywood when you're teaching?
I'll tell you, if you're going to be shooting for Hollywood, you got to make that decision. I'm not going to lie about that, right? That's why I'm not in Hollywood. I shoot with independent filmmakers now around the time I can. I've got a burgeoning young family that we're trying to kick off, and I'm not young, but the family is young. And the commitment to that, and this is one of the things that my dad gave me you guys all know the triangle, right? Everybody know the basic triangle: good, fast, or cheap, right? My dad gives me this thing when I'm like 18. It's good, fast, or cheap. You can do everything in life can be put down to that. And I'm listening to him, I'm like, whatever. And I finally found myself in front of a class about 10 years ago, going, yeah, all your decisions, I'm going to say this: you can have everything you want. You can't have it at the same time. You can have everything you want, and you will sacrifice, you know this, Mike, you will sacrifice some things to get others. So if you want to have a successful teaching career, I'm a teacher, I'm a good teacher. I have sacrificed that Hollywood thing for this, but I find joy in this. I find an immense joy in working and bringing my students to success. I also find an immense joy of leaving my students during the summertime, going onto a set, being scared out of the Dickens, and picking back up a camera and making a visual language happen, right? So you can have it both ways. Am I making the big bucks? No, but I mean, I didn't really get into this to make the big bucks. I really wanted to do visual storytelling, tell stories that had not been, and I'm still working on telling stories that have not been represented out there. So yeah, I mean, you will combine the two. I think it's a little bit easier as a writing professor because you can come home, you can do this solo with yourself. And then, as I know, several writing professors have writers groups outside that keep them chugging along, right? And so you aim yourself around that summertime of, this is when I'm going to get my writing done. And several of our professors who are writer directors have been successful as well because they've done this, and then they've been able to get their films into film festivals, and they've taken during their sabbatical month, or if they apply for it, look, I've got this great opportunity, I can shoot this incredible film, and we apply for a fellowship. So you can do that. You can step away for a while because it brings better recognition to your university and your school. So all that's capable. You have to, but again, you can have everything, not at the same time. Oh, and the triangle was good, fast, and cheap. You can have two of those, not all three. You'll figure it out.
Good answer. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Thank you, Michael. Anyone else?
I had a question. You mentioned that you suggest that we take a class in entrepreneurship to help plan our future career. Like, what specific things is it, like becoming good at marketing, or what specific things do you think?
Self-marketing, self-marketing, how you handle the money that you get. You have to be your own investment officer, right? You have to be your own accountant. You can't make money and get what we call 1099, where they're going to give you all your money. And you have to decide, you have to figure out how you're going to take a portion of that money, put it away into an account, so the government, when they come to you once a year, doesn't say, give us money right now. And you're like, well, I don't have $16,000. Well, you had $16,000 when you made it, right? And so an entrepreneur class teaches you how to handle all those things because you're running a small company. And so you will be running a small company. All of you guys should consider looking into what we call establishing a DBA, a doing business as, a limit LLC as a group. If you have 2 or 3 people going together, find out what those all mean to the betterment of you being able to have a more successful career because you're not running from paycheck to paycheck. And looking at the advantages of whether or not it's advantageous for you to join the union. The union gives certain things and advantages to you. And don't just come out of school going, what's the union? while you're here, you should be investigating the union and what it means to freelance crew members, below the line crew members, what it means to above the line. And we all know below the line, above the line, there are people, and if you don't know, just raise your hand and I'll explain it. But it's important for you. I'm a below the line person's DP. I didn't get that discussion when I was in grad school. And I think it's one of the key ones that we're focused on trying to share with you guys now, is that financial competency and planning for your move into film school and your exit from film school. Did that make sense, Heather? Okay. Yeah, my wife's name is Heather, so thank you.
Great question, Heather. Anyone else?
Just to let you know, if you're documentary oriented, you should consider our school as well. We have a long, strong history of some very successful documentaries coming out of our graduate and undergraduate programs. We have an undergraduate program that goes to Bonn, Germany, and they spend a semester there shooting documentary work. So don't shy away from this if that's a consideration that you want to also explore while you're studying.
That's great. Thank you, Charles.
I had a follow-up question if anybody
Yeah.
had a question. You also mentioned something about fundraising for grad school. I'm not sure if I understood what you're saying. Are you saying?
Yeah, what I'm saying is, grad school is going to be paid out of your pocket with student loans. I say that if you can talk to your family, if you can, it doesn't hurt to look where each one of you guys sits in terms of what money's out there. There are grants out there. They're few and far between for art funding for art school, but they are out there. And you need to start looking for, is there one out there for you, Taban? Is there one out there for you, Sophia? Who are you? What are you writing? What is your experience? Don't just assume that they're not out there, because reducing your payments for your first year in half is massive in terms of your long life commitments to your student loans, right?
Awesome. Okay, we have another question in the chat from Chris.
Yeah.
Chris is curious as to what you believe are the most practical skills to complement cinematography. So writing, directing, editing.
Good question. I think in today's world, Chris, it's actually going to be editing and visual effects. So After Effects, understanding After Effects, Da Vinci, color correction, editorial, because they're going to often come to you and they're going to say, hey, we need this film shot at ProRes 444, at 4K, at 2398. And then you understand what that is. That's great. But then the editor will hey, we're thinking about cranking it to 48. What does that look like? If you don't know what that looks like, what are you ready for that? So that exploration in all the visual portions of storytelling can help you. And one of the cheapest ones to do is to do a lot of work on Unreal Engine. Right now is free. Taking a couple courses in Unreal Engine, which is the VR world, as well as Da Vinci. Da Vinci is free. It's a color correction and color manipulation program. And then After Effects, because while you might be not working one weekend, you could be working for someone doing trailer effects for another movie. I know a DP who he just kept on dipping back. He was my first AC at USC, and he was shot for a while. And then he was like, man, I find that I really love it inside the room, really manipulating the image. Next thing I know, Mark is in Atlanta making buku dollars as one of the key colorists for Roger Deakins and Tyler Perry and a lot of their work. So you need to I would ask that you all consider your myopathy when it looks at, I'm going to do this one thing. Remember, life is long. You will learn a lot. And if it starts to, if your interests start to shift someplace else, allow them. Follow that interest, follow that passion, because you could find yourself. I started off as a cinematographer and then as a colorist. I started off as a cinematographer, and actually, I really just love doing production design. That's what I found my love is, just moving things and putting things in front of the camera. All that's viable. Don't get into the race of everyone has to be a director, right? There's so many jobs on the set that you can develop your craft through. And doesn't mean just because Joel Schumacher will show you, he was working as a wardrobe and production designer for many years before he got a chance to direct his film. And the Batman films he directed are all very classically kitsch, but they're massively production design is one of the massive aspects. So you can find your way into directing through other venues.
Thank you, Charles. Do we have any other additional questions? All right. Well, seeing as there are none, Charles, is there anything else that you'd like to say?
No, I just want to encourage everyone to make a strong decision as to the time that you decide to attend film school. Make it right for you. Make it come with passion. Come with passion that includes an ability to be teachable, right? And because I think a lot of students assume that, oh, I know this. That's great. We're going to tear that down and we're going to give you a new way to consider it and look at it. And be teachable. Jump in the pool and help your fellow classmates to learn. If someone's struggling, reach back, pull them forward. You never know what they can give you. And last thing is, what's the name of the film behind me here? Anyone got that? These are all old. When you say older films, they're older than, some of the films are older than maybe around 10 to 15. This one's around 20 years old. And it was amazing when it came out. If you haven't seen it, it's called City of God. And I would say definitely watch this movie. Yeah, there we go, James. Yep, City of God. Thank you, James. Yes, you got to watch that movie. Global cinema is blowing up. Oh, one last bit of advice. Learn a second language. You guys will be producing in a world where Netflix doesn't care. Netflix is producing right now in Nigeria, looking to produce in Tanzania, going globally. Wherever you need to be able to add that spice of, well, I speak Spanish as well. Then go and be creative in Spanish-speaking countries, or shoot here knowing that you can communicate that language. You have to think more globally, because your jobs may be sending you around this world. And it will behoove you to learn a second language.
Awesome. That's great advice. Charles, I feel like you've inspired me to get out there being bilingual. But no, you've been fantastic. If there aren't any other additional questions, we can conclude the event. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Charles, for giving us your time today and sharing your background, your experiences, and answering our questions and all the advice that you have. As a reminder, those of you that are applying for the fall 2023 semester, our application deadline is December 15th of this year, 2022. I'll also drop our email address in the chat. You can contact us if you have any questions at sftvgradprograms@lmu.edu. Thank you all again.
Thank you, guys. See you later.